Welcome everyone to Aging in Action, and we're very happy to have as our guest today Susan Greer, and she's the Executive Director with Natural Burial Association. Welcome, Susan.
Welcome, Susan. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much. It's really nice to be here.
Yeah. Well, and I can't remember how I first heard about your association. Maybe it was something on Facebook or something, but it really piqued my interest because I'm very interested in alternative ways to leave this earth or not leave this earth. But anyway, and I thought this is something I'm sure a lot of people would want to know more about because the way of funerals is changing, right? That we are evolving and there are options to people.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gwen. I think it is not enough people know about this, but if you think of how weddings have changed over the past, 20, 30 years, and everybody's putting their own customized stamp on it and creativity. And 50% of marriages end up in divorce. So what about death, where it's pretty much 100% guaranteed, and it is an important milestone in our life. So it's a shame that we don't spend more time thinking about it because it provides so much solace to those of us that, thinking of our own mortality, but also equally important, if not more importantly, to the loved ones that are left behind. Absolutely. Yeah. It's important.
So tell me a bit about Natural Burial Association. Is that a non-profit or what type, or when did it start, or what's it all about?
Sure. Okay. So it started a while ago, actually, in 2005. Did anybody, I'm sure there'll be some of your listeners or viewers out there that read Owl or Chickadee, or their kids read Owl or Chickadee magazines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the founder of those magazines, you can imagine, was quite a nature lover. And Marianne Brinkman was in the UK in 2005, and she went to a natural burial, and she came back and she said to Michael DePoncier, who was a guy who started the Green Living Show and Highway for Heroes and a tremendous number of wonderful initiatives in Canada. And she said, Michael, this is natural burial. We have to do it. It's just like her eureka moment. And so they founded this organization, and I think it was kind of a little bit before its time. So it went into a hiatus for a long period of time. And then in 2018, I happened to hear, kind of like you, Gwen, when you heard about natural burial over a Facebook post of ours, or however you heard about it. I heard about it on the radio, and I thought, oh my gosh, it was just like an my aha moment, which turns out to be either really lucky or a curse. I'm not sure which, all these years later. But it makes so much sense. And we hear this time and time again when people hear about it, they're like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. And so that's the most lovely thing. Yeah.
Well, joining us now is Lisette Wirta. Thanks, Lisette. Hi.
Hi, sorry for the delay.
No, that's all right. That's all right. Yeah, so we just started chatting with Susan, who's the Executive Director of Natural Burial Association. And I said it certainly piqued my interest to find out more about alternative ways of dealing with death. Yeah.
So Susan, I have to ask, you're located main office outside of the Toronto area. What do we have here in Northern Ontario that is, an option for us when it comes to the organic, the natural, the green, anything of that burial? I'm to understand North Bay, which would be closest to us. I know I'm very sad right now. I'm very sad, but we will connect on the alternative.
But don't feel that the answer is because you're, quote unquote, Northern Ontario. We're not doing very well anywhere in Ontario. There's two kinds of natural burial grounds. There's hybrids, and those are natural sections that are created within a conventional cemetery, usually on the edge of it. And that could be anywhere from 1/4 of an acre to a couple acres. Those are called hybrids. And then there's what's called standalone natural burial grounds. Okay. And those are when a natural burial ground is created, like in the natural landscape, nothing to do with a conventional cemetery. If you close your eyes and imagine a meadow or a woodland, that's what those natural burial grounds look like. The only public natural burial grounds in Canada is on Salt Spring Islands.
Oh, really?
So yes, we're really behind. There's hundreds of natural burial grounds in the US and in the UK. And it's just really hard in Ontario.
Wow.
Really hard.
Why?
So, well, there's a number of reasons for it. The first one is awareness, right? Like you are involved in death care, and this is on your mind all the time. Yet you didn't know about it a while ago. So we've done an Angus Reid poll, and over half the Ontario population isn't aware of natural burial as an option. So that's the first thing. If you can't want something that you don't know about,
right?
The other thing is that for those of us with whom it could be a love of nature, but it also could be the idea that you want to do your last act to be giving back to the earth. People think that cremation is eco-friendly. Like 70% of people in Ontario cremate. And of course it's not, if you stop to think about it. You're burning in an incinerator for about 2 hours at 900 degrees Celsius, and up goes the carbon. It's about 2 SUV-sized tanks of gas.
Yep.
And that's required for everybody. And there's other toxins that, of course, get into the atmosphere. And so the first thing is that people, think that they're doing the eco-friendly thing. So there's probably no need for them to search further. And we don't think about death too much, so it doesn't really occur to us. But to answer your question, Joy, if there are no hybrids in Northern Ontario, and I think I would know if there are, I don't think there are, then first of all, rally, get a group together, fight for it. And the other thing is, and actually the Natural Burial Association can help with that. That's one of our rules. We have all these local advocate groups around the province. So we can discuss that another time. But you could, if you're facing death imminently, then in Ontario, there's a law that at every cemetery, even if that cemetery's bylaws demand that one has to buy a vault, they have to have a section of the cemetery in which one doesn't need to have a vault.
Designated?
So, pardon me?
Is it like designated, correct? It's like a designated spot.
Yeah. Exactly. So if they don't demand a vault, and most people don't know this, but of course you don't legally have to embalm. And you can insist upon a biodegradable casket. So then you're having a natural burial. You're giving your body back to the earth in that regard. The difference between that and being buried in a natural burial ground is that in a natural burial ground, they pay particular attention to what's happening above the ground. Right. Do you want me to take a second and just explain like what exactly natural burial is?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure if listeners would want.
So the body is not embalmed, or not with chemical embalming at any rate. And it's wrapped in a shroud, natural fabric shroud, or a biodegradable casket, like a pine box or a wicker box, or even cardboard, even recycled cardboard, which is great because the grandkids can write all over it, draw little pictures. And so, meaningful. And then they are lowered into the ground, and not 6 feet, but 3 feet, because that's where the richest soil strata is. And that really helps the decomposition. And so they're well and deep enough that there's no concern about scavengers. And then on top of the deceased, the land is restored to its natural eco habitat. So it could look like a meadow, or it could look like wooded area. And there's no trails, there's no mowing. On natural burial grounds, there's about 300 plots per acre, whereas in a conventional cemetery, it's about 1,000 or more per acre. So really respect for what not upsetting the system, in the soil. And then of course, every cemeteries, including natural burial grounds, their bylaws are all unique to that cemetery. But at natural burial grounds, there's 2 ways of doing the memorialization. Either there's a modest flat stone. Sometimes there's some cemeteries that say it has to come from that land, or any flat marker, and the name of the person and the year of their, their birth and death is written on there. Or sometimes there's no markers. Instead, there's a communal marker, like a big boulder, and everybody's name is there. And then that's trying to give the sense that your legacy is all of that meadow or all of that forest. That's your legacy, not just that 4x8 plot. But legally, every cemetery operator has to be able to tell somebody where their loved one is. So there's always, via GPS or other means, you can always know exactly, should you want to, where your loved one is. So that's in a nutshell what natural burial is.
I had an opportunity in Niagara Falls, and I think it was at Hybrid, and I had an opportunity about 4 or 5 years ago to go through that area. And I have to tell you, if I wouldn't be imposing on my family, I'd be buried there. My ashes, my remains, my whatever the choice would be, it had deer legs and beehives, and it was like a park. There was people sitting on benches on lunches and babies in carriages, and it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. And I'm like, okay, that's nothing against Southern Ontario. We love our people, but I'm like, we have beautiful land in Sudbury in the north, and we love our country. Why are we not with the times? I'm trying to figure that piece out still, because it doesn't make sense.
No, I'll just tell your audience a little bit about you referring to Willow's Rest in Niagara Falls.
Yes,
and
Willow's Rest.
It's got apiaries with their beehives, and it's got butterfly pollinators and hiking trails. And there was a dead ash tree that a sculptor carved a bench out of that. So it truly is beautiful. And that's the whole idea of these natural burial grounds. They're sanctuaries for the living and the dead, four-legged and two-legged animals, all of us. And well, I think that the key thing is more people know about it. Let's hope that after this show, the phones are ringing off the hook, and you've got a natural burial advocacy group formed in Sudbury.
Yeah.
And then the other barriers, there's a couple barriers that are significant. And one is, we have in Ontario, we have crazy high cemetery fees. For instance, if you bought a full burial plot in a cemetery in Ontario, let's say it cost $1,000. 40% of that has to go into what's referred to as the care and maintenance fund. That's the fund for the long-term perpetuity of the cemetery, the long-term maintenance. So it's really beautiful that we live in a province, and there are many provinces like this, where we respect our ancestors so much that we want them to be taken care of. But that 40% in Ontario compares to a national average of 13%. It's like 25% in BC, 15 in Saskatchewan, 15 in Nova Scotia, 0 in Quebec. So where did that 40% come from? And the way that it works, I don't want to bore it down with details, but the cemetery can only use the capital off that. So $400 goes in. If that earns $40 in interest in a year, they're only allowed to use that 40. So, really, in a way, the elderly are being gouged. They're putting what in essence ends up being millions into these perpetuity funds that aren't being touched. So it's really, I think we need to come in line in Ontario in that regard, particularly because natural burial grounds, of course, cost a fraction of the price. So we are asking the MPPs to, in the next government, to look at the price of natural burial being so insignificant. There's no mowing, there's no tombstone maintenance, pesticides, all of those expenses we don't have, and see if they can't lower the price for natural burial grounds. And then the other barrier is that in Ontario, if a new cemetery operator wants to open a new cemetery, so that an existing cemetery is grandfathered in, but if a new one, so somebody wants to open a natural burial ground, they have to show that they have $165,000 in their care and maintenance fund before they can get a license. And in every other province but one, that's 0. So it's really set up to prevent the creation of a natural burial ground, because the kind of people that are creating natural burial grounds, it's really like a calling. It's not like a business person, in the ivory tower with shareholders to answer to, saying, how can I, think of another business plan. Like, it's not like that. These people feel so, it's like they're answering to Mother Nature and they're answering to the families. It's an entirely different thing with the people that run the natural burial grounds. They're such beautiful people. Like, and some of them, they go to every single solitary ceremony. The one was describing preparing a grave. He said, I felt like a bird feathering a nest. Like, they really, like, one of them in the UK, Christmas Day, she went and walked all around to see her residents, as she called them, or her guests, like, it's truly a calling. And so that person may not have 165 sitting around, 165,000, because there's already, of course, costs involved to get a cemetery going.
Susan, is it possible for somebody we have a lot of land up here in the north. Is it possible, if I've got a farm, can I just bury my ancestors on my farm, or do I need permission to do that?
You won't get permission. It's illegal.
No commenting.
That's what was done years ago.
Yeah.
You had a family plot on your homestead.
Land.
Your homestead.
I know. Yeah. And I did read about a farmer who was able to bury his loved one in the property in Alberta. So if you move to Alberta, Gwen, then there you go. But no, it's not legal in Ontario. And but what's happened is, so we have two people who have come forward, one in West Grey County and another in Grey Highlands in Ontario, and they really want to be buried on their property. And one has horses, and she buries all her horses on the property, which of course is perfectly legal. And she's like, I want to be there. And so they'd like to start natural burial grounds. So,
it makes
and the
sense.
one pardon me?
It makes sense to me. I don't understand. I guess, it's to prevent people from, burying somebody, anybody. But as long as things are registered and everybody knows where that person goes from their deathbed, they're put here. I don't understand, but of course there's always reasons for all of these things, but it just seems like there's too many rules and regulations for a lot of things.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, I'm glad that the care of our dead is regulated in Ontario. I think that's a nice, respectful thing. And I guess, 9 out of 10 people would have great intentions about where they're going to bury. But I suppose the problem is, let's say somebody did bury on their property and then it changed zoning wise and it was going to be developed, or, somebody wanted to expand a house. Like there are complications, respect for the dead. If there's a bulldozer
But certainly we've got enough land in Northern Ontario that there should be a way to do something like that. It just takes somebody with the initiative to start it, right?
You know what? Like, if the word gets out, it's funny. Of all the obstacles we have to get natural burial grounds going, you'd think that the number one thing keeping me awake would be finding land, but it's not, because I find that the more that we get out there and spread the word, people with land come to us and say, oh, this sounds like such a great idea. I'd like this on my property. So if we get the word out there in Sudbury, I'm sure it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have, and I think of cultures, faiths, Indigenous communities, like, the Manitoulin Island, great, beautiful country. And I'm sure there's a lot of individuals that would be very interested in having an alternative choice, right? It comes down to personal choice. What can we do? Not even as a group, just an individual who's like, okay, we need change. We need to bring a voice, in a respectable way. We love our industries here. We love our funeral directors. We have great relationships. We've all had a relationship with one or another at some point in time over the last decade. But how can we move that conversation forward? Is it knocking on our MP door to say, hey, we need to make change? Is it going first to your organization to say, hey, how do we do it? What can an individual who's either a viewer, listener, a group who's interested, what does those next steps look like, their action plan moving forward?
Right. People like it for a lot of different reasons. And the beautiful thing about natural burial is it's not, if one thinks it's like only the tree huggers, that's not the case. It's not at all. There's and religious people and secular people, all ages, Muslims and Jews very much practice natural burial today, right? They don't, without the meadow and the forest on top. And so the thing to do, Yeah, I would first of all educate people. So I do think our website is really, really robust in that regard, and sign up for, to stay in touch, sign up with email. And also what we do is if one person reaches out from Sudbury and says, I'd like to form a group, we have the way that everybody signs up, they give their postal code. So we have the ability to cull those postal codes, and we can send out an email calling all people in, this region. Do you want to form a group? And then we can help, that's the kind of thing that the media, your local media, someone can tell a story. And then again, we'd be happy to furnish information so that whomever is leading the cause in your neighborhood can speak with, some sort of knowledge about natural burial and why it's great. And then the thing is that, there's two routes. We know that the majority of people are keen on a standalone natural burial ground. They really love the idea of not being attached to a conventional cemetery, but being absolutely enveloped in Ontario's beautiful landscape, particularly where you live is so beautiful, right? And there is land. So then that would require somebody coming forward, or maybe the municipality saying, okay, this is something our constituents want, and it's part of our city plan that we want to be green, and it's part of our city plan that we want to help alternative forms of business, small business, and this checks all the boxes. So for instance, Kingston is a trailblazer in that. They passed a motion saying, hey, we want to be the first municipality in Ontario to have a natural burial ground. So let's get a competition going. Sudbury, Kingston.
That would be great. We must be running out of time. Joy, how are we doing for time?
Well, I was just about to say, we're coming down to the last 2 minutes of our tape today. And, that being said, is there you've given us so much words of wisdom and information to be shared. And I think we're going to have a lot of listeners engaged. Is there any last, advice or knowledge you want to share at this point before we wrap up today?
I think the only thing that I would leave people with is whether it's natural burial or not, it doesn't serve any greater comfort to dodge the issue. And it is nice to think about these things and discuss with people what your wishes are. So I wouldn't avoid the conversation. I think it's a really important conversation to have. And if it is natural burial, again, our website's got tons of information to help people. But even, whatever it is, it's just important to talk about it.
Great words.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Susan. It's been an amazing opportunity to chat, and we've learned so much. I think we'll definitely be sharing all the contact information, your information to be shared, anything that you have passed on to Gwen to make sure that it gets to our listeners and our viewers. We are on multiple platforms, and I have a feeling it's going to start some really interesting conversations very shortly in the greater Sudbury region. And who knows, maybe there will be a group. Lizette's got one.
Maybe I want to see a battle of the municipalities.
Well, that'll be great. Fun. Yes.
I think that's a great. Segue out. But we'll definitely be knocking on some doors in Greater Sudbury. But thank you so much for joining us today.
We're here to help. That's our role, is to help all the municipalities. So give us a call. Take care.
Susan.
Thank you for helping us age in action.
Thanks
so everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.